The Galactic Arena on Nexus Prime had seen its share of champions over the centuries. Mighty Carathian warriors with their bone-crushing mandibles. Swift Zentari hunters whose reflexes could track plasma bolts mid-flight. Even the dreaded Vex High, death dancers whose six-armed combat forms had become legend across 12 star systems. But never had the Arena Master seen anything quite like this. Commander Zethkar clicked his chitinous fingers against the observation deck's reinforced transparisteel, watching the lone figure below with a mixture of fascination and growing unease. The human sat cross-legged in the center of the blood-stained sand, apparently meditating. His name was Marcus Chen, according to the detention records, a cargo hauler from the Terran Confederation who'd been caught smuggling medical supplies to a quarantined colony. "This is absurd," rumbled Warlord Grakthos, his massive bulk straining against the viewing booth's reinforcements. "One small human? My prize fighters could snap him like a twig." The joke had seemed harmless enough, at first. The Hegemony's arena served multiple purposes: entertainment for the masses, elimination of criminals, and a brutal reminder of the natural order. When the human's lawyer had invoked the ancient right of trial by combat, the Arena Masters had laughed. Humans were notorious throughout the galaxy for being weak, soft creatures who relied entirely on their technology. Strip away their ships and weapons, and they were barely worth noticing. So they'd thrown him into the arena as a publicity stunt. The crowds had roared with laughter as the pale, unremarkable biped had been shoved onto the sand. Betting pools opened immediately, not on whether he would die, but on how quickly. That had been 6 days ago. The first opponent had been a juvenile Krexmar, essentially a warm-up act. The massive insectoid predator stood nearly 3 meters tall, with serrated claws that could slice through ship armor. The Arena Masters expected the human to die screaming within seconds. Instead, Marcus had done something unprecedented. He'd studied his opponent. For nearly 10 minutes, he'd simply watched the Krexmar pace and posture, dodging its initial charges with minimal movement. The crowd grew restless. Where was the spectacular violence they'd paid to see? Then the human moved. He'd rolled beneath. The creature's sweeping claws grabbed a handful of sand and flung it directly into the Krexmar's compound eyes. While the predator thrashed blindly, Marcus had picked up a piece of broken armor from a previous fight and used it to systematically destroy the creature's knee joints. The Krexmar had collapsed, helpless. Marcus could have killed it. Instead, he'd simply stepped back and waited for it to be removed from the arena. The crowd had fallen silent. "Bring out the next one," Zethkar had ordered, convinced it was a fluke. The second opponent was a Torvan berserker, a mass of muscle and rage that had never known defeat. The chemical cocktail flooding its system made it immune to pain and fear. It should have torn the human apart. Marcus had led it in circles for an hour. The human seemed to possess an almost supernatural ability to read his opponents. He anticipated every charge, every strike, every desperate lunge. When the berserker's chemical high finally wore off and exhaustion set in, Marcus had simply pushed it over and pinned it until the arena keepers arrived. Again, he could have killed. Again, he chose not to. By the third day, the betting pools had shifted dramatically. Veteran fighters were studying recordings of the humans' matches. Xenobiologists were being consulted. The arena's medical staff was baffled by the human's endurance. He seemed to recover from each fight faster than should have been possible. The fourth opponent was Sektar the Ripper, a legendary killer who had earned his freedom through 200 arena victories. He entered the ring with ritual scars covering his hide and murder in his 6 eyes. Marcus had ended the fight in under 2 minutes. He'd fainted left, causing Sektar to overcommit to a devastating strike that buried his primary claws deep in the arena wall. While the veteran struggled to free himself, Marcus had methodically broken every one of his opponent's secondary arms. When Sektar finally pulled free, he was effectively defenseless. For the first time in the arena's history, a champion had forfeited rather than face defeat. Now, on the 6th day, the Arena Masters faced an unprecedented problem. Word had spread through the criminal underground. Fighters were refusing to enter the ring, not because they feared death. Death was always a possibility. They feared something worse. the systematic dismantling of everything they thought they knew about combat. "He's not even armed," whispered Tech Priest Yeloth, manipulating the arena's sensor array with his cybernetic appendages. "No weapons, no armor, no enhancement drugs. How is this possible?" Commander Zethkar studied the readouts. The human's biometrics were completely normal for his species, well within baseline parameters for a Terran male. No hidden augmentations, no genetic modifications, no exotic technologies. Just flesh and bone and whatever passed for a human mind. "Sir," reported the communications officer, "we're receiving formal protests from 17 major fighting guilds. They're claiming the human is using some form of illegal psychic manipulation. And scans show no psionic activity whatsoever." A new figure entered the observation deck. Arena Master Vex High Zulnoth himself, his ceremonial death mask gleaming under the artificial lights. In 3 centuries of managing the arena, he had never personally intervened in the matches. "Release him," he commanded. The silence that followed was deafening. "Sir?" Zethkar's voice cracked with disbelief. "You heard me. Open the gates. Let him walk free." "But the crowds have seen enough." Zulnoth's voice carried the weight of absolute authority. "Do you know what that human has done? He has turned our arena into a joke. Not through strength or speed or savagery, but through something far more dangerous." He gestured toward the figure below, still sitting calmly in the sand. "He has introduced the concept of thinking." As the arena gates opened and Marcus Chen walked toward freedom, the news was already spreading across the galaxy. A human had entered the most notorious combat arena in known space and emerged undefeated, not through violence but through intelligence, patience, and an uncanny ability to find weakness where others saw only strength. Within a month, applications for Terran military academies would increase by 400%. Within a year, 3 major hegemony worlds would petition to join the Terran Confederation. And in the grand arena on Nexus Prime, for the first time in its bloody history, the sand would remain unstained for weeks as fighter after fighter found excuses to be anywhere else. The human had won through the most devastating weapon in his species' arsenal. He had made his enemies think.